The night the city swallowed him, Salvatore Sal De Luca stumbled out of the back of a stolen laundry van with rope burns on his wrists and a prayer he couldn't quite remember. He hit the cracked asphalt behind Pier 46 with both palms, rolled, and kept rolling until the van's doors slammed and the muffled curses of the men inside tore down the wharf. Then the engine revved, tires screeched, and the van vanished into a spill of sodium light and fog. He lay still for a long beat, feeling the iron taste of panic in his mouth. The wind off the Hudson stung his face. Somewhere far away, a tugboat moaned. Somewhere closer, a gull laughed like a drunk. Sal assessed himself with the slow caution of a man who'd once survived 3 bullets. Ribs sore, ankle wrenched, head ringing. He lifted a trembling hand to the back of his skull and found a sticky patch the size of a $50. Blood, old, clotted. They'd clocked him when he tried to run, in that windowless room that smelled like cigarettes and bleach. He should have recognized the room. He should have recognized everything. The particular brand of Russian cigarettes, the greasy sound of money being counted, the gravel and silk of Viktor Kozlov's voice. He knew those things in the way you know a song from childhood. You don't remember learning it, but your tongue knows every note. Yet when he tried to assemble the facts into a coherent picture, a dark fog rolled in. Names blurred. Faces shifted. Time slid sideways. He knew there was a sun. He knew there was a house with lemon trees on a terrace that wasn't supposed to grow them. He knew he was loved and feared and hunted. He knew that if he stopped moving, he'd die. He pushed up to his knees. A wave crashed inside his skull. The wharf tilted. He crouched, breathing slow, waiting for his insides to settle. Footsteps?
No, just the slap of water and the growl of a truck on the avenue.
He staggered to his feet and tested his weight on the bad ankle. It held barely. He needed to get off the river, blend, find, what, a name. The lemon trees, the sun. He walked. The night thinned as he traveled east, the fog peeling back to reveal the dull orange dome that hung permanently over Manhattan. He cut through the meatpacking, all glass boxes and shadows of the old city, and climbed the iron ribs of the High Line to cross the tracks. He came down again near 10th Avenue, following the low-bellied glow of a diner sign, Lucy's. The red neon buzzed gently against the window glass, and the vowel swam in the vapor, Lucy S. At the edge of his vision, a woman's silhouette moved between tables, a soft blur of blue and white. He pressed a palm to his ribs and tried the door. Warmth, coffee. The smell of griddle butter and syrup and something clean. Citrus, maybe, or a cheap lemon cleaner, sharp enough to scrape his sinuses. The booths were vinyl, green as a faded traffic light, and the counter had chrome edges someone polished like a religion. 2 cabbies talked in Spanish at the end. One woman in a blazer cried quietly over a plate of eggs, and a teenage couple split a strawberry milkshake through 2 straws like a joke from a different decade. The bell over the door acknowledged him with a bright ding that felt like it drilled straight into his skull. "Sit anywhere you like," the girl said. He knew she was a girl because of the voice, low, warm, professional, but kind. He could have told her a dozen things about herself from those 3 seconds. She walked fast, but not like she was running. She smiled with her eyes more than her mouth. She could convince the refrigerator to fix itself if she talked sweet enough. He turned toward her and realized he didn't know his own name. She was small and sturdy, all forearms and ponytail, the classic light blue uniform pressed within an inch of its life, white collar crisp, white sneakers a little scuffed. The name tag on her chest read Maya in tidy black letters. She balanced 2 plates on one arm like a magician, 1 stack of pancakes crowned in butter, 1 blue bowl with fruit glowing like jewels. She set them down at table 4 and turned back to him, and for a second, he felt anchored to the floor by the simple gravity of her attention. "You okay, sir?" she asked. "The way you ask it when you mean it." "Yeah," he said. The word tasted unfamiliar. "Just coffee. Any booth you want. I'll bring it." She hesitated, eyes flicking to the side of his head where the drying blood darkened his hair at the nape. "We've got a first aid kit, too. In case you tangled with a door frame." He tried to smile and ended up with a grimace that looked like a confession. "Door frame 1. Thought so." She nodded toward the corner booth by the window. "That one's softest." He slid into the booth, focused on breathing, on keeping all the pieces of himself inside his skin. She arrived with coffee in a thick white mug, the kind that glowed around the rim where it met the light. Cream. Sugar? Black is fine. He reached for the cup and realized his hands were shaking. She didn't remark on it. Kitchen does a decent chicken soup if you need something warm. On me, on me. The words landed like a blanket. His mouth worked around a protest that wouldn't come. I thank you. No worries. She leaned in just a little, voice now pitched for just the two of them. Name's Maya. You can level with me if you need help. This neighborhood's full of people pretending they don't. He wanted to tell her everything and nothing. He settled on, I'm looking for a place. A house. He frowned, chasing the memory. There's a terrace. With lemon trees. Something flickered across her face. Concern, curiosity. She didn't press. Drink your coffee. I'll be right back. She was a comet then. Napkins, a glass of water, a tiny bowl of oranges for the crying woman, a joke for the cabbies, a refill at the counter. She moved like she belonged to the place. Like the air got warmer when she passed through it. The bell on the door dinged twice more, and the cook shouted, Order up! And Sinatra crooned from a radio somewhere near the pie case about the city that never sleeps. The soup arrived steaming. He didn't know he was starving until the spoon was moving from bowl to mouth like someone else was doing it. Maya slid a small plastic packet across the table. Antiseptic wipe, she said casually. You've got a bit of a thing. She gestured vaguely at the back of her own head. And I'm not going to make you go to a hospital if you don't want to. But you should clean it. He took the wipe, the sting of alcohol a neat little lightning bolt. Thanks. How's the soup? It tastes like home, he said, surprised at the truth of it. She smiled and it changed her whole face. Then you've had a decent home. He swallowed. Lemon trees, a boy, a laugh like a snapped violin string. Maybe I did. When he stood an hour later, the city had slid subtly from night into pre-dawn. The crying woman had stopped crying. The cabbies had left. The milkshake had melted into a pink puddle, and the teenagers had vanished into whatever future teenagers vanish into. He fished a wad of damp bills from his pocket and stacked them on the table, trying to count. The numbers crawled away from him like insects. Maya's hand landed gently on the money. Don't worry about it, she said. I told you. On me. I can't. You can, she said, with a steel that made sense of how the refrigerator would listen. You can pay me back by coming in tomorrow and telling me how the lemon trees went. He looked at her and felt something shift inside him. Some tiny compass needle that had been whirling madly for hours catch on north. Tomorrow? Breakfast rush starts at 6. I'll save you a booth. He nodded like a pilgrimage had been assigned. Okay. Outside, the city's first trains rattled awake. He started walking again, following a scent he couldn't name, a geometry of streets that would surely resolve into the right angle if he walked long enough. He found a bench in a pocket park between two buildings, sat down, and slept as the sky pinked and the day changed ownership. Even the most disciplined man breaks after 3 days without sleep. By the end of the third day, Dante DeLuca's pupils had narrowed into pinpoints, and his jaw ached from clenching. He had turned his phone into a weapon, contacting private eyes on 3 coasts, calling in favors owed from the Pentagon to Palermo, snapping orders at lieutenants who knew better than to argue when the boss's father was missing, and rumors said Victor Kozlov's hands were the ones that had scooped him off the sidewalk. On the 4th morning, Dante woke hunched over a war table on the 2nd floor of the DeLuca townhouse. A map of New York spread so wide the corners curled. His sister's voice moved through the room like a knife through silk. Drink, said Alessia, slapping an espresso on the map where Midtown should be. And eat this or I will call Nonna and tell her you've forgotten how. He blinked up at her. High cheekbones, black hair like a curtain, eyes that could kill a man or get him to donate a wing to a hospital depending on her mood. She wore grief like a private dress under the armor. He took the espresso and the biscotti she forced into his hand. We hit 3 of Kozlov's drop houses, Dante said, voice gravel. Empty. His men talk but they don't know. Or they know and they like their teeth. You need sleep. I need my father. Alessia's mouth tightened. So do I. She set a small stack of photographs on the table, security camera stills, timestamps stamped in cheap digital font. We ran the full grid, Midtown to Red Hook, nothing, but She slid the last photo closer. This one is from a West Side diner 2 nights ago. Lucy's. The camera faces the door. 2 a.m., dead hour. See anything? He leaned in. His heart stuttered, then stuttered again. The image was muddy, the quality cheap, but the silhouette in the corner booth had a posture he'd know at the edge of the world. The way Sal sat with one hand curled around a cup and the other worrying a napkin into a rope. The set of shoulders that had held Dante when he was 6 and his dog died, that had thrown a man into the East River when Dante was 21 and didn't listen. At the edge of the frame, a waitress in a blue dress leaned in, giving him a bowl. "He's alive," Dante said. The sentence cracked like ice. He felt the room reorient around it, furniture and air molecules taking orders from the words. "He's alive." "He was," Alessia said carefully. 42 hours ago. Lucy's. He tasted the word. "Where?" "Chelsea." She pointed south of their map espresso stain. "Corner lot, chrome, neon," I called. "Morning girl's name is Maya. Student. Pre-med, from what the manager said. Lives in a walk-up in Alphabet City. Works the graveyard to pay tuition. A student. A waitress. A stranger. Pouring soup for his father at 2 a.m. Dante held the photograph like it might sprout wings and fly. He could feel the edges of the world sharpening. "Get the car." Alessia watched him, something wary and fond in her gaze. "Dante, what?" "Don't go in there like a storm." He looked up, startled. She had always seen through him. "I'm not. You are. I love you, but you are. You go into rooms like you own the air and then wonder why everyone stops breathing." She pointed at the photograph with her chin. That girl gave him soup. If she did that for free, if she kept him safe, we are guests. "We're DeLucas," he said, a reflex as old as his bones. "We are guests," she repeated, softer but more dangerous. "I will haunt you if you scare her." He pocketed the photo. "I'll be the picture of charm." "You don't know what that looks like." He was already at the door. At 5:45 a.m., Lucy's hummed with the particular electricity of a place that had survived 3 owners, a flood, a mouse problem, and the consolidation of a dozen delivery apps into one faceless app that tried to choke it. Maya rode the hum like a current. She rewired the anxiety of unpaid tuition into efficiency. She turned her grief, small, private, old, into gentleness. She converted her fury at the city's indifference into stainless coffee pots that never ran dry. She had learned to move, so the regulars didn't notice when she slipped an extra egg onto a plate or swapped a kid's soda for milk because his teeth were already sugar glass. She had been poor long enough to understand that compassion was currency. The bell dinged. She looked up out of habit and stopped breathing. The man who walked in had the kind of presence that rearranged the air molecules. He wore a black suit with no tie and a black expression with no softness. His hair was cut close, jaw carved like a Roman coin, stubble the exact length that says, "I meant it." He was not tall so much as correctly scaled to the room. His eyes moved once, left to right, and in that sweep Maya saw him catalog the exits, count the heads, assess threat vectors. She smelled expensive cologne and rain. Behind him, a woman with the same eyes paused at the door, then peeled off toward the corner booth like she'd already decided which table would be best for defense. 2 other men remained outside, shadows with earpieces. Maya's first instinct was not fear. It was recognition, not of the man's face. She'd have remembered that, but of the world he brought with him. The city was a stack of maps that only sometimes overlapped. She had grown up on one of the maps where men like this were bedtime stories and cautionary tales. Don't take the money that pays too easily. Don't open the door to anyone at midnight who calls you dear. Don't look twice if 2 black SUVs park across the street from the bodega at dawn. She put on her best smile anyway. "Morning," she said as cheerfully as you can greet a thunderstorm. "Sit anywhere you like." His eyes landed on her name tag for a fraction of a second. "Maya," he said, like he was turning the syllables over in his mouth to test their weight. "Coffee?" "Of course." She poured before he sat, instinct telling her his patience lived on a tight fuse. He took the cup like it might bite him. The woman with him chose the corner booth, the same corner booth, slid in and took out a tablet. Her suit was charcoal. Her shoes were absurdly clean. She smiled at Maya with her mouth but not her eyes. "You served an older gentleman here 2 nights ago," the man said. No, please, no polite preamble. His voice was low, smooth, with that faint rasp that comes from saying too little and meaning too much. He set a photograph on the counter without looking away from her. Maya glanced down and felt her throat tighten. It was him, her doorframe fighter. Older than the photo made him look, with kind hands and a way of saying thank you like he was placing a coin in an offering dish. Fear crawled its way up the back of her neck, not of the man in front of her, but of the story the picture implied. Yes, she said carefully. He came in, late, he was hurt. Is he all right? The woman asked, and her voice was a shock, genuine concern wrapped in silk and armor. He had a cut on his head. Maya folded her hands to keep from fidgeting. She had learned a long time ago that answering only the question asked is not lying. He ate. He left. Did he say where he was going? The man asked. He was looking for a house, she said. With lemon trees? The woman made a small noise. The man blinked once, slow. Something raw crossed his face, so quickly Maya might have imagined it. That sounds like him, he said softly, almost to himself. Do you know him? Maya asked, because the script was tired and her curiosity ached. The man looked back at the photo, then up at her. The decision he made took 1/10 of a second and an entire lifetime. He's my father. Her breath hitched. Then he's safe, she said reflexively, as if the claim alone could make it true. He should be with you. He should, the man agreed. He extended a hand across the counter, surprisingly formal. Dante. She stared at his hand a beat longer than etiquette allowed, as if expecting it to close like a trap. Then she wiped her palm against her apron and took it. Heat flared up her wrist at the contact, ridiculous and unwanted. His palm was warm, dry, steady. She wondered how many people had trusted that steadiness to save them, and how many had learned too late it could crush. I'm sorry, Maya said. He didn't give me a name. I tried to make him go to a hospital. He said he needed to find his house. He has trouble, Dante said delicately. Some days the past sits better in his hands than the present, especially when he's stressed. Someone hit him, Maya said before she could talk herself out of it. Hard. He didn't want me to call anyone. He was scared. The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. We believe he was taken. He escaped. Maya's eyes widened. Taken by who? The man and woman exchanged a look. In it was an old argument. The woman won. A rival, she said. A bad one. Maya looked down at the photo again. He'd had soup and asked if it tasted like home, and she'd told him it did, and he'd smiled at the bowl, like it had told him a joke only he understood. Everything in her rebelled at the idea of him in a room that smelled like cigarettes and bleach. He said he'd come back, she offered. For breakfast. Dante's jaw worked. Did he? No. She realized it sounded like an accusation and softened. But that doesn't mean he won't. The bell dinged. The morning regulars started pushing in on a tide. Construction guys, a nurse, 2 dog walkers with 7 leashes braided around their wrists. Maya poured, plated, smiled, floated. Dante didn't sit. He became a column in the geography of the counter, still and unyielding, hands around his cup like it might tell his fortune if he held it long enough. His sister took the corner booth and started sending and receiving messages in silence, the air around her thrumming. At 7:06, the door dinged and the air changed. Maya felt it before she saw him. People make different kinds of silence. His was the narrowing of a funnel, the way a room concentrates when something fragile lands in the center. She turned, and there he was in the doorway. Sal, hair combed with his fingers, shirt from a charity bin, hands raw from a fight with rope. He looked smaller in the morning than he had at 2 a.m., as if the daylight scraped away some of whatever force had propelled him through the night. Hey, Maya said softly, stepping out from behind the counter like she was approaching a bird with a broken wing. Your booth's open. He looked at her like he was trying to reattach a name to a face. Then relief washed his features, and it did a beautiful thing to his mouth. Soup? Soup. He limped toward the corner booth. As he passed the counter, Dante stood. The moment caught like flint. Sal stopped. He stared at the man who was the shape of him, 10 inches taller and 30 years younger. His eyes filled so fast Maya felt it in her chest. Dante swallowed. His throat moved once, twice. He didn't reach out. He didn't say a word. He only breathed Papa. Sal's face crumpled. He made a sound like something breaking and being repaired in the same instant. Figlio, he whispered. And then Dante was there with his hands on his father's shoulders and his forehead against his father's. And there were tears. The kind men think they are too strong to make and never are. The diner went silent in that particular New York way that means we're not looking, but we're absolutely looking. The nurse at booth 2 turned away with a hand over her mouth. The cook called order, and then lowered his voice to a whisper. Maya's eyes stung. She backed up a step to give them space and nearly collided with Alessia, who had left the booth like she'd been pulled by a magnet. The sister reached past Maya to touch her father's cheek, and Sal pulled her close with the same hand Dante wasn't holding. They all stood there for a breath, a minute, a lifetime. When they finally sat, it was a tangle. Maya set soup in front of Sal without being asked, coffee in front of the other two, water they didn't touch. Dante held a napkin with the absent-minded ferocity of a man who might strangle the delicate linen if it looked at him wrong. "How did you get away?" he asked quietly. Sal's brow furrowed. "Door frame," he said, and Maya let out a surprised laugh that turned into a sob she swallowed. Dante looked at her, and she saw the edges of his mouth tilt. Not quite a smile, not. "We need a doctor," Alessia said. "A real one, not a diner one." "Hey," Maya objected, hand to heart. Rude. Alessia shot her a look that contained apology and threat in equal measure. "I'll have one meet us at the house." At the house. Lemon trees. Maya wondered if there was a real terrace, or if the trees lived only in Benadryl dreams. Sal spooned soup into his mouth with reverence, as if it were sacrament. Dante watched him eat like a man watching a bomb tick down. Maya refilled the coffee. She was not a person who fidgeted, but her fingers wouldn't stop finding work. Wipe, stack, fold. She noticed 3 things in the white noise of adrenaline. Dante didn't sweeten his coffee. Alessia stirred hers without drinking. Sal blew carefully on each spoonful like he had once taught a small boy to do. Then the bell dinged again, and the air changed a second time. 2 men in denim jackets with clean nails and dirty eyes slid onto stools at the far end of the counter. They ordered coffee in voices that didn't care what it tasted like. They did not look at the DeLucas. They did not look away from them. The taller one had a tattoo behind his left ear, a small black rook. Maya made their coffee. She delivered it. She smiled her neutral smile. Then she angled herself, so the reflection in the pie case showed her Dante's face as he saw them. No expression, but something in him had folded a knife open and clicked it locked. Alessia's phone vibrated. She glanced down, thumbed a message, and her expression didn't change at all, which told Maya it had changed a lot inside. She stood. "We should go," she said softly. "I haven't finished," Sal protested, chin tipped stubborn like a boy. "Bring it," Maya said, already reaching for a to-go lid. "It'll taste like home in the car." Sal brightened like a child invited to a secret. Dante's eyes flicked to Maya. "Thank you." She pretended not to see it. The rook tattoo lifted his cup, sipped, grimaced. "Coffee's burnt," he announced to the room. "Then don't drink it," Maya said sweetly. The words were like lacquer, shiny, thin, poisonous. He grinned. "Hey, sweetheart. You got a minute to talk? Manager things." "I'm the manager this hour," she lied. "What's up?" "Health code stuff." He leaned in, breath sour with peppermint, like he believed it canceled other smells. "Back room." "Nope," she said cheerfully, loud enough for the cook to hear. "Right here is fine. Or better, out there." She jutted her chin toward the door. "We do our health code in the sunshine." A muscle in his jaw jumped. He stood and placed a slow $5 bill on the counter, sliding it back and forth with one finger. "A service tip," he said. "Be careful who you give free soup to." Maya's heart hiccuped. He hadn't been here 2 nights ago. Someone had told him. Her eyes flicked to Dante. He didn't move, but something in the molecules around him did. The rook leaned closer. "You never know who might choke." "Kitchen's closed," the cook barked suddenly, emerging from the pass with a cleaver he did not need, and a look that said he'd carved more than brisket. "You boys can leave." It got quiet again. The rook held Maya's gaze. decided she wasn't worth a broken glass in a crowded room, finished his burnt coffee like a dare, and left. His partner followed. The bell dinged time back into motion. Alessia was already paying at the register. Dante stood, his chair's legs scratching the tile. He put a $100 bill on the counter, and when Maya opened her mouth to refuse, he put another. "For the soup," he said. "And the health code." "I said," she began, and stopped, because his expression said, "You'll insult me if you refuse this," and she did not have the time or the willingness to start a cultural war over a check. "Okay," she said, "but I'm counting it as a donation to the college fund." "Pre-med?" he asked, the corners of his mouth doing that not smile again. "Neuro," she said, surprising herself with the honesty. "Brains are stubborn." "Tell me about it," he muttered, glancing at his father, who refused to leave without a plastic spoon. They moved quickly. A black SUV slid to the curb as if the city had grown it there. Maya stood at the door with a to-go bag, her hand on the glass, watching them load Sal gently into the back. Sal rolled down the window before they shut the door and held out the spoon like an oath. At 7:06, the door dinged and the air changed. Maya felt it before she saw him. People make different kinds of silence. His was the narrowing of a funnel, the way a room concentrates when something fragile lands in the center. She turned, and there he was in the doorway. Sal, hair combed with his fingers, shirt from a charity bin, hands raw from a fight with rope. He looked smaller in the morning than he had at 2 a.m., as if the daylight scraped away some of whatever force had propelled him through the night. "Hey," Maya said softly, stepping out from behind the counter like she was approaching a bird with a broken wing. "Your booth's open." He looked at her like he was trying to reattach a name to a face. Then relief washed his features, and it did a beautiful thing to his mouth. "Soup?" "Soup." He limped toward the corner booth. As he passed the counter, Dante stood. The moment caught like flint. Sal stopped. He stared at the man who was the shape of him, 10 inches taller and 30 years younger. His eyes filled so fast Maya felt it in her chest. Dante swallowed. His throat moved once, twice. He didn't reach out. He didn't say a word. He only breathed Papa. Sal's face crumpled. He made a sound like something breaking and being repaired in the same instant. "Figlio," he whispered. And then Dante was there with his hands on his father's shoulders and his forehead against his father's. And there were tears. The kind men think they are too strong to make and never are. The diner went silent in that particular New York way that means we're not looking, but we're absolutely looking. The nurse at booth 2 turned away with a hand over her mouth. The cook called order, and then lowered his voice to a whisper. Maya's eyes stung. She backed up a step to give them space and nearly collided with Alessia, who had left the booth like she'd been pulled by a magnet. The sister reached past Maya to touch her father's cheek, and Sal pulled her close with the same hand Dante wasn't holding. They all stood there for a breath, a minute, a lifetime. When they finally sat, it was a tangle. Maya set soup in front of Sal without being asked, coffee in front of the other two, water they didn't touch. Dante held a napkin with the absent-minded ferocity of a man who might strangle the delicate linen if it looked at him wrong. "How did you get away?" he asked quietly. Sal's brow furrowed. "Door frame," he said, and Maya let out a surprised laugh that turned into a sob she swallowed. Dante looked at her, and she saw the edges of his mouth tilt. Not quite a smile. Not. "We need a doctor," Alessia said. "A real one, not a diner one." "Hey," Maya objected, hand to heart. "Rude." Alessia shot her a look that contained apology and threat in equal measure. "I'll have one meet us at the house." At the house. Lemon trees. Maya wondered if there was a real terrace, or if the trees lived only in Benadryl dreams. Sal spooned soup into his mouth with reverence, as if it were sacrament. Dante watched him eat like a man watching a bomb tick down. Maya refilled the coffee. She was not a person who fidgeted, but her fingers wouldn't stop finding work. Wipe. Stack. Fold. She noticed 3 things in the white noise of adrenaline. Dante didn't sweeten his coffee. Alessia stirred hers without drinking. Sal blew carefully on each spoonful like he had once taught a small boy to do. Then the bell dinged again, and the air changed a second time. 2 men in denim jackets with clean nails and dirty eyes slid onto stools at the far end of the counter. They ordered coffee in voices that didn't care what it tasted like. They did not look at the DeLucas. They did not look away from them. The taller one had a tattoo behind his left ear, a small black rook. Maya made their coffee. She delivered it. She smiled her neutral smile. Then she angled herself, so the reflection in the pie case showed her Dante's face as he saw them. No expression, but something in him had folded a knife open and clicked it locked. Alessia's phone vibrated. She glanced down, thumbed a message, and her expression didn't change at all, which told Maya it had changed a lot inside. She stood. "We should go," she said softly. "I haven't finished," Sal protested, chin tipped stubborn like a boy. "Bring it," Maya said, already reaching for a to-go lid. "It'll taste like home in the car." Sal brightened like a child invited to a secret. Dante's eyes flicked to Maya. "Thank you." She pretended not to see it. The rook tattoo lifted his cup, sipped, grimaced. "Coffee's burnt," he announced to the room. "Then don't drink it," Maya said sweetly. The words were like lacquer, shiny, thin, poisonous. He grinned. "Hey, sweetheart. You got a minute to talk? Manager things." "I'm the manager this hour," she lied. "What's up?" "Health code stuff." He leaned in, breath sour with peppermint, like he believed it canceled other smells. "Back room." "Nope," she said cheerfully, loud enough for the cook to hear. "Right here is fine. Or better, out there." She jutted her chin toward the door. "We do our health code in the sunshine." A muscle in his jaw jumped. He stood and placed a slow $5 bill on the counter, sliding it back and forth with one finger. "A service tip," he said. "Be careful who you give free soup to." Maya's heart hiccuped. He hadn't been here 2 nights ago. Someone had told him. Her eyes flicked to Dante. He didn't move, but something in the molecules around him did. The rook leaned closer. "You never know who might choke." "Kitchen's closed," the cook barked suddenly, emerging from the pass with a cleaver he did not need and a look that said he'd carved more than brisket. "You boys can leave." It got quiet again. The rook held Maya's gaze, decided she wasn't worth a broken glass in a crowded room, finished his burnt coffee like a dare, and left. His partner followed. The bell dinged time back into motion. Alessia was already paying at the register. Dante stood, his chair's legs scratching the tile. He put a $100 bill on the counter, and when Maya opened her mouth to refuse, he put another. "For the soup," he said. "And the health code." "You're good," he told her simply. "You too," she said, not trusting her voice for more. Dante hesitated on the sidewalk. He looked taller outside. The morning light put copper threads in his dark hair. He slid a card across the doorframe. Black. Raised letters. Not a business so much as a boundary. "De DeLuca and a number. I'll have someone watch the block," he said quietly, without threat. "Just in case." "In case of what?" she asked, even though she knew. Because questions have power, in case someone takes health code too seriously. She tucked the card into her apron without looking. "I can take care of myself." "I don't doubt it." He paused, and in the pause lived all the things you don't say to a stranger you owe your life to. Then he said something else entirely. "Thank you for feeding my father." "He paid me in stories," she said. "You owe me nothing." He considered that, nodded like the math checked out, and slid into the car. The SUV merged into morning. Maya stood in the doorway a long time after the taillights vanished, the card warming against her hip, the bell's ding settling back into the soundscape of eggs and Sinatra, and orders up. She counted the cash in the till and set aside the 200s for the emergency scholarships fund she and the cook kept in an old coffee can under the sink. Then she took down a clean mug, poured fresh coffee, and pretended the slight tremble in her hand was from caffeine. The DeLuca terrace did in fact grow lemons. They grew in terracotta pots the size of bathtubs, lining a balustrade that looked down on a patch of the West Village that still remembered poets. The smell of them, clean, astringent, a little dangerous, cut through the chemical vanilla of the antiseptic as Dr. Verratti checked Sal's pupils and pronounced the concussion mild. The stitches unnecessary, the rest a matter of calm he knew this family did not own. "Memory will return like a shy cat," Verratti said, patting Sal's shoulder with a hand that had been steady through 3 generations of DeLuca emergencies. Approach sideways. Don't call it by name. Can we keep him safe? Dante asked. A man who'd learned that safety is a currency with no fixed exchange rate. You can try, Verratti said. Don't let him wander. Keep the house quiet. No newspapers. No television. No talk of... He glanced at Alessia, at Dante, at the world that lived under their skin. Business. They tried. They failed a little. They tried again. Sal slept on a chaise under a lemon tree and woke with a start at 3:30, insisting he had to meet Carmine at the docks. Alessia sat with him and knitted a scarf in August, because the motion calmed her. Dante paced like a caged thing and gave orders to ghosts under his breath. When Sal asked for soup, the kitchen sent up 3 kinds, and none of them tasted like Lucy's, because a diner's soup is not a recipe. It's a place. On the second evening, as the sky turned a tired, bruised peach and an ambulance somewhere sang a city lullaby, Dante found himself leaning on the terrace rail, phone cold against his palm, card warm in his pocket. He wasn't a man who called strangers. He wasn't a man who asked for help. He had built an empire on the sacred belief that asking made you weak, and offering made you dead. But his father had asked for soup, and a girl with a ponytail and a voice made of cloth napkins had given it, and the map had shifted. He dialed. Lucy's Diner, this is Maya, came the voice, higher now, buoyed by evening rush. It's Dante, he said, and realized he had no title for himself that wasn't a threat. From the morning. Oh, she said, and he could hear her smile over the line, could map the way it must hunch one shoulder up a little, tuck the corner of her mouth like a secret. Hi. He asked for your soup, Dante said, feeling absurd. And he doesn't like any of ours. Of course he doesn't, Maya said, like men refusing soup was a language she had fluency in. Yours probably tastes like money. He laughed before he could stop himself. It came out rusty, like something from childhood. Would you? He stopped. Begging had a taste too, iron and salt. He swallowed it. Could I buy a gallon? You can have 2, she said promptly, then caught herself. I mean, the owner will charge you because capitalism is a scam, but yes. When do you need it? Now, he said, and then softer. Please. Give me 30 minutes, she said. I'll bring it. You don't have to, I know, she said gently and hung up. 32 minutes later, the bell rang downstairs, and Dante pulled open the front door to find Maya on his stoop with 2 insulated bags and a smile that made the old townhouse brighter. She looked smaller out of the uniform, in a faded denim jacket and black jeans, hair twisted into a messy knot. Her sneakers were still white somehow. She smelled faintly of lemons and grease pencil. You live here? She asked, tipping her head back to take in the facade, the ironwork, the way the house seemed to listen. For the moment, he said, stepping aside. Come in. Do I need to sign an NDA? Do you want to? Not really. Then no. She walked into the foyer like she belonged to herself. He led her upstairs to the terrace, where Sal sat with a blanket on his knees and a lemon in his hand like an orb. He looked up as they came out, and a smile cracked his face. Soup girl, he said warmly. Maya, she corrected, even as her cheeks colored. You can call me Maya. Maya, he tried, tasting it. Like a lullaby. She set the bags down and began unpacking. 2 quarts of chicken noodle, 1 lentil, 1 tomato basil, garlic bread wrapped in foil, a small container of parm, because dignity is parm. She moved naturally in other people's space, a borrowed grace of those who have always set tables they don't eat at. Dante watched his father watch her, a softness he hadn't seen in Sal in months. Your trees are real, she said, delighted, as if the city had done something decent and she didn't want to scare it away. Imported from Sorrento, Sal said proudly, memory apparently filing that fact under things not to lose. Smuggled like contraband. Smuggled lemons, Maya said. That feels illegal in a cute way. Nothing about us is cute, Dante muttered. She shot him a look over her shoulder, and he felt, absurdly, like he'd been scolded by the good part of the world. They ate. The soup did in fact taste like home. Sal made a happy noise over the chicken noodle that made Dante's throat ache. Alessia came up midway, took one look at the scene, the girl, the soup, the lemon, and arched an eyebrow so eloquent Dante considered taking a picture. After, Maya collected the bowls, ignoring protests. "I'll run these back tomorrow," she said. "You can reimburse me with, parking, because finding a spot on this block took 10 years off my life." "I'll send someone to carry your car," Dante said, before he could stop himself. "Please don't," she said. "It's a Civic. It's been through enough." The sun slid away. The city clicked on its night jewelry, string lights over a backyard, windows blinking into constellations, sirens painting alley walls red, blue, red, blue. Maya put the empty containers back in the bag and lingered like someone who doesn't want to admit she cares. Dante stood like a man on the edge of a cliff, pretending it's a sidewalk. "Thank you," he said finally, "for all of it." "You're welcome," she said. "But I didn't do it for you." "I know," he said, and felt something in him loosen. "I think that's why it matters." She studied him for a second that felt like judgment and curiosity braided together. "You look less scary on a terrace." "You look exactly like yourself," he said, which was neither flirtation nor insult, and somehow both. "Is that good?" "It's honest." She nodded like she'd file that somewhere she kept her gentle things. "Would you—" he began, then stopped. He'd been running this city since he could legally buy bourbon. He'd never once felt out of language. "Would you come again tomorrow? Dinner. My mother wants to meet you." "Your mother?" she repeated, delighted and alarmed. "She's strong," he said, which in his mouth meant dangerous. "But she's soft where it counts." "Then yes." He walked her downstairs. At the door, she paused with her hand on the knob, looking up at him. "Do you always watch people the way you watch me?" "How do I watch you?" "Like you're deciding if I'm a problem." "You are," he said honestly. "But not the kind I'm used to." She grinned. "Good." She slipped out into the night with her insulated bags and her Civic, and a piece of him he hadn't agreed to give. He stood on the stoop until the taillights turned the corner, and only then did he realize his shoulders had dropped an inch. Victor Kozlov wasn't a man to leave a favor unpaid. He'd sent 2 boys to the diner to scout and found a girl who smiled like a razor. He'd sent a whisper to an officer in the 7th to check a plate and learned the Civic belonged to a student with a scholarship balanced on a knife's edge. He'd sent a man to the block to watch, and that man had disappeared, which told Victor the DeLucas had widened their radius. So he changed approach. He sent flowers, not to the townhouse, to Lucy's. A dozen long-stemmed roses, color the exact crimson of arterial blood, delivered at noon on a Saturday when the line was out the door. The card said, "For the girl with the generous hands. Tell Mr. DeLuca to say please next time." No signature. No need. The cook stared at the roses like he'd like to chop them. Maya stared at the card until the letters blurred. Then she slid it under the register and went back to pouring coffee like nothing could shake a river. At 5, the bell rang, and 2 uniformed cops came in for pie and to stand where the city could see them. At 7, Dante texted, "We're coming." At 8, the bell rang again, and the room hushed at the sight of a woman who had crossed entire oceans without wetting the hem of her dress. Gianna DeLuca wore black like a uniform, and pearls like they remembered her neck from another life. Her hair was silver, her eyes were winter sunlight, and when she smiled at Maya, the whole diner exhaled. "You are the girl who feeds my men," Gianna said, as if reporting a miracle. "I feed everybody," Maya said, hands suddenly shy. "Some are harder to feed than others." Gianna glanced at her son, who had the decency to look briefly chastised. "I am told you saved my Sal." "He saved himself," Maya said. "I just heated soup." "Anyone can heat," Gianna said. "You warmed." She took Maya's hands in both of hers. Her palms were soft from creams and hard from life. "You are welcome in my house." "That's a lot," Maya said, because she'd learned to meet grandeur with humor. "Thank you." They ate at the corner booth. Chicken parm for Gianna, who pronounced it almost as good as hers, which was like being knighted. A burger rare for Dante. A salad for Alessia that she prodded like it had done something wrong. The roses watched from the end of the counter like a threat. Gianna asked Maya questions with the intensity of a searchlight and the ease of a grandmother. Where did she study? Hunter. What did she study? Neuroscience. What did she love about it? That the brain could save itself if you gave it a story to hold on to. Dante listened, something like wonder cracking his hard cup. He had dated models and lawyers and women whose perfume you could smell from a floor away. He had never sat in a diner under a neon sign and listened to a girl talk about synapses like they were choreography. When the check came, Gianna paid with cash and slipped an extra bill into the coffee can under the sink while pretending to wash her hands. Maya pretended not to see it to preserve everyone's dignity. Outside under the neon, Dante lingered. The neighborhood hummed, a saxophone crying from a second-floor window, a couple arguing in French, the laundromat throwing light into the street like a party. He leaned against the brick and watched Maya tie the garbage bag and drag it toward the curb. "You don't have to do that," he said, "because useless sentences sometimes jump fences." "Neither do you," she said. "But here we are." He took the bag from her hand anyway. Their fingers brushed, static blooming. He swallowed. She pretended she didn't feel it. "I got flowers today," she said almost casually. "What kind?" "The kind that bleed." She described the card without taking it out. He listened without interrupting. His face did not change. His shoulders did. "I'm not stupid," she said. "I know who they're from." A slow-burning fury rose off him like heat from a hood. "I'll take care of it." "Don't kill anyone over roses," she said lightly, because the alternative was terror. "It makes the papers." "Over you," he said, and the words came out before the logic could drag them back. "I'll kill anyone I need to." She looked up at him, startled and unstartled. "That's not romantic. It's not meant to be," he said. "It's a fact." She nodded once. Facts she could file. "Okay," she said, and the city exhaled. The first time he kissed her, it was because she told him not to. They had fallen into a pattern that wasn't a plan. She brought soup. He brought lemons. She taught Sal to play a memory card game that used pictures of places he loved. He had a piano tuned and watched her figure out Debussy from muscle memory she didn't admit she owned. Alessia teased them both ruthlessly and then left them alone in rooms on purpose. Gianna watched and approved and arranged. The roses stopped. The rook moved to another board. One night after the dinner rush, he closed the diner with her. He flipped chairs, wiped tables, learned the ritual, ketchup bottles, sugar caddies, the holy art of the crease-free napkin. Sinatra murmured low on the radio. The neon made veins on the counter glow. The city outside was a dark sea with bright fish. He dried his hands on a towel and said, "This feels like a church." She laughed. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about this grease trap." "I mean it." "I know." She sank onto a stool and let her shoulders drop, an intimacy he recognized as rarer than nakedness. "Don't kiss me," he blinked. "I wasn't going to." "Yes, you were." She looked at him sideways, that grin that told the refrigerator to behave. "You're thinking about it." "I am," he admitted, because he had been taught honesty as a weapon and found he preferred it as a gift. "I think about it constantly." "Don't," she said. But she was smiling, which confused every part of him that didn't already live in confusion. "Not because I don't want you to. I do." She said it like a diagnosis. "But because once you start, you don't stop. And I have a midterm at 8. He laughed, a real sound that made the pie case do something magical with the light. "What's the topic?" "Hippocampal plasticity," she said. "Memory," he sobered. "Bring it home then." She stood, set the towel on the counter, walked to him with careful steps like she was carrying something hot, and rose onto her toes to touch her mouth to his. It wasn't cinematic. It was simple, controlled, fiercely soft. It was mercy. He had been kissed by women who tasted like sugar and ambition. She tasted like coffee and lemon peel and the exact truth. "Now go," she said, breath warm, "before we burn the diner down." "Yes, Dr. Maya." "Not yet," she said. "But soon." He left with his hands shaking, and the map of the city under his feet rewritten. When Koslov finally moved, he didn't do it with roses. He did it with fire. A small empty warehouse on the edge of Red Hook went up in the kind of blaze that eats whole blocks if the wind wants to help. The FDNY fought for 6 hours. Dante watched from a car 3 streets over with his jaw clenched until it ached. At dawn, a text arrived from a number that had never existed before. More where that came from. Tell your girl to keep her hands to herself. In the quiet after, he realized something cold. The girl wasn't an accident anymore. She was a lever. He went to the diner at noon with a proposal and a fear. The proposal was security, a car, a safe house she would hate. The fear was that she'd say no, and he'd have to choose between protecting her and respecting her. She listened, back against the stainless counter, arms folded. He realized he loved the line of her wrists. I can't stop working, she said. Rent exists. I can pay. I know, she said gently, and put 2 fingers over his mouth to stop the word before it shamed them both. I won't be owned by money. Not yours. Not anyone's. You said. He nodded because she was right, and because he'd never had anyone stop him like that and have him not mind. Let me at least drive you. There and back. And make me look like a target? You already are, he said, and watched her swallow the truth. Please, he added, a word he did not give lightly. Humor me. She thought for a long beat, then sighed. Fine, but the car has to be ugly. He almost smiled. We have access to an entire museum of ugly. The next morning, Maya got out of a tan 2006 Corolla with a dented bumper driven by a grandmother named Rosa, who could bench press a man and did, once in '89. Kozlov's spotter across the street wrote down the plate and reported a ghost. The city laughed in 7 languages. That night, when the diner closed and the city hit that particular pitch where anything could happen, and you have to decide if you're the kind of person who runs toward or away, Dante walked her home. He did it without asking, because sometimes the question itself is a danger. On her stoop, under a streetlight that turned moths into planets. She touched his wrist and said, You are getting in deeper. He said, I was born at the bottom. She said, I meant with me. He said nothing, because the word yes felt like stepping off something high. Don't save me, she said, and then, softer, save with me. He rested his forehead against hers, the city a blur smell of hot trash and jasmine, and said, Okay. The end, when it came quickly, like good endings do, snapping tight what had been loose, closing the door the city kept opening. A tip whispered to Alessia led to a safe house in Long Island City with a view of a bridge that made it easier to lie about being safe. Inside, 3 of Kozlov's men packed to run, and 1 talked because his teeth liked their current configuration. A phone on the table pinged with an address and a time. The time was tomorrow. The address was Lucy's. They weren't going to burn it. They were going to walk in at breakfast and turn it into a message. Dante went cold and then very hot and then very still. He made 2 calls. One to a cop who was not a cop, and one to a man who owed him a war from Palermo. Then he sat on the floor of the townhouse hallway with his back to the wainscoting and his head in his hands, and remembered his father's hand on his head when he was 6, and the dog died. He stood up and did what his father had taught him, made a list and broke it into jobs. At 5:30 a.m., the block around Lucy's became incidentally the safest block in Manhattan. Delivery trucks stalled at the corner. A bus broke down in front of the fire hydrant. A cab got a flat. 2 old men played chess very slowly on the sidewalk where the rook would need to pass. Inside the diner, Maya poured coffee for regulars she had texted at 3 a.m. to come early. Please, first cup on me. They came because they loved her, and because the city works when people say yes to each other. At 6:02, 3 men in clean denim with dirty eyes turned the corner and ran into a city that had rearranged itself a degree. They pushed through the door. The bell dinged like a laugh. They took 3 steps and stopped because there were 8 cops at the counter and none of them were cops. The one with the rook tattoo smiled at Maya, slow. Morning, sweetheart. She smiled back with her teeth, slow. We're out of roses. Dante stepped from the bathroom like a trick of light and stood between the men and the girl, hands empty and palms up like a man negotiating, and not like a man who had already placed snipers on 2 roofs. You came for breakfast, he said. Let me feed you. They didn't leave in cuffs because cuffs make headlines. They left in cars that were not theirs, thinking they had made choices. Sometimes violence is a straight line. Sometimes it is a field of magnets and you move a piece here and the whole board hums. Later, When the block exhaled and the bus started, and the cab drove crooked to the shop, and the old men knocked over their kings, and the city returned to its regularly scheduled miracles, Maya refilled his coffee and said, "You didn't kill anyone today." He said, "Not today." She nodded, accepting a ledger that would never balance in public. "Come tonight," she said. "I want you to hear something." That evening, under the lemon trees, she set her phone on the terrace wall and played a recording. Sal's voice telling a story into her phone about a boy and a dog and a summer the city forgot to be cruel. She had recorded him in the afternoons when the light made him softer, and she played it back to him at night when the fog came down. The brain could save itself if you gave it a story to hold on to. Dante listened with his eyes closed, and when the voice broke on the word Figlio, he reached for her hand like the map was finally correct and the road lay clear. Gianna watched from the kitchen door, her pearls catching dusk, and nodded to a god she negotiated with daily. Alessia leaned on the railing and texted 3 people good news she didn't name. When the story ended, the lemons breathed, and the city below them changed colors like a living thing. Dante turned to Maya, fingers still laced with hers. "Marry me," he said, and it was ludicrous and perfect and early and exactly on time. She laughed through tears. "That's not how hippocampal plasticity works." "I don't know what that means." "It means yes," she said, and kissed him until the city forgot to be cruel for the length of a song. The terrace hummed. The lemon trees listened. Somewhere downtown, a tugboat moaned like a blessing, and in a little diner under a neon sign that buzzed Lucy S. when it got tired, a cook turned off the radio and locked the door and set tomorrow's soup to simmer, because some loves are fed, and some empires are undone by a spoon.